Warm greetings. Welcome to Saturday Sailing of Grammar of a Lake, a podcast with a goal to understand urban lakes of India. I'm Akash, a curious youth who has often wondered about the life of lakes around us. In this series, I'll be speaking with Dr. Mansee Bal Bhargava, who has spent 3 decades learning, loving, and living the urban lakes. In our conversation, we shall explore and experience our understanding about lakes since they are very much part of our daily life, whether we realize it or not. Together, we shall co learn and co create how we make knowledge, appreciate, and celebrate the lakes that quietly shape our cities and our communities. Without further ado, let's talk depth of a lake. Dr. Mansi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much,
Coming
Akash.
to my first question, what do you mean by depth of a lake?
Yeah, as a simple word, it's depth of the water body, as it sounds, but it is not that simple as we look at it, and it is one of the things which is being most tempered, and that's why it's important to discuss it. Before I get into the definition, I thought we must put it right there. And it's actually the distinct layers. So when we have to talk about depth, we have to look at two main words, the zones and the layers. So broadly, a lake is into two major zones. One is euphotic zone or photic zone for that matter, the well-lit upper layer of the lake, where photosynthesis occurs, where we talk about different life system, more thriving life system. And this layer is up to the point where light enters the water body to the bare minimum possibility, let's say 10%, 1%. Then there is aphotic zone. So euphotic zone is what I just said, and then there is aphotic zone, which means the deeper, darker region where light is not going, and it is insufficient for any life to thrive there. So there is light and life which are interlinked, and the depth decides the light penetration. Of course, the pollution also decides the light you know going into the lake, but then also the life is dependent on how much light is coming. So when you get into these two broad zones, then we have to look at the details of it. So then the edge of the lake or the shallow part of the lake, where you can also see if it is a good clean lake water, you can see it, and that's called the littoral zone, where light reaches up to the bottom of the water body, which is the lake edge in most of the times, where you can actually see the plants which are not only in the half submerged in the water body, but also coming out of the water body, like grasses, some aquatic other plants, depending on the region we are talking about. And you will find birds there. You will find small fishes, flowing there. You will find birds standing there and taking their food, and also on and so forth. Then we have limnetic zone, which is the vast expanse of water. Basically, majority of the lake area ideally should be in that zone. So we are talking about a gradation also of the depth of the lake, but also the body of the lake which holds the water, which is the land or the soil of the water of the lake. So limnetic zone is basically the area where you have from shore or the edge of the lake to the middle of the lake, where light can go. So basically limnetic zone is part of euphotic zone. So it gets a bit complicated, but let's put it in this way. Littoral zone and limnetic zone are part of the upper part of lake, so which is euphotic zone. Then we have the profundal zone, which is the deep, dark part of water body where light is not going there. No plant growth is happening. And basically, it's the space, very important space for any lake, where decomposition of whatever life thrived in the water body, whether it is the aquatic flora or the fauna both, uh, where decomposition is taking place. Because there is no light, there is shortage of oxygen, there is not much water movement, so its water is still, it is a colder water. So the decomposition of the life takes place, and which is a very important part of the water body, very thick kind of water. And then we have the last zone, which is the very wet soil kind of place, basically the bed of the lake or the sediment layer of the lake, the bottom part of the lake, which holds the water. So the nature of the last two zones, profundal zone or benthic zone, which are broadly in the aphotic zone. So remember I said two zones in the beginning. So they are basically subdivided into two further zones. So the benthic zone is basically the body on which the water is sitting. And it's the most important part of lake in that sense. Of course, all parts are important, but the composition in the profundal zone will decide the nature of the benthic zone, will or decide the amount of water the lake will hold over the years, the amount of water the lake will percolate over the year. And that also decides the flood level of the lake, that also decides the minimum water that is going to be there in the summertime. So it gets very important, but it is also very interesting to understand these things. I will stop here.
Uh, Definitely, these are the layers of a lake, and I had never heard any of these names before.
Yes.
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
we don't need to remember the names, but important to four words I will say, the zones and the layers. So we have two broad zones, and within two broad zones there are four layers, and then two more words to remember, that the light penetration will decide the life thriving in the lake. That's important for us.
Interesting. All right. Hmm. All right. So, my next question is, how is depth of a lake misunderstood?
Yes. We were talking about the origin of the lake or birth of the lake initially, and we need to understand the differentiation of different wetlands or water bodies is by the depth of the water body, which means we are also, in a way, classifying the nature of life that is going to thrive in that water body. As I talked about earlier, also, all water bodies are wetlands, whether it is river, whether it is marshland, peatland, lake, pond, swampland, they are all wetlands. So, but not all water bodies actually qualify in the sense that they are lakes. So, lakes are deeper water bodies as compared to marshland, peatland, swampland, ponds also. So, the difference comes from the fact that when we are deepening pond or any of these water bodies, we are turning those water bodies into lakes. And the misunderstanding arises from the fact that we imagine lakes to be, on one hand, life thriving agent or resource or water body. On the other hand, we are deepening the water body to increase its water impounding capacity, to hold more water. The deeper we keep making the lake or any water body. So let's say you converted a marshland or a peatland or a wetland into a lake. You are already engaging in reducing its life holding capacity. And you are doing it in this with an intention that you want to increase its water holding capacity, which is also not true, because deepening of the water body means even the faster percolation from the water body. So which means it is not going to hold the water you are planning to make lakes. In other words, the very act of making more lakes itself is a misunderstanding about the water body. We are going left, right, and center to deepening the water bodies. That is wrong. And I have been screaming to the top of my voice for last 20 years about it, that we should not deepen the water bodies. And even if we want to do dredging, we will talk about dredging, deepening, and desilting sometime. But even if we have to do, there is a scientific way to understand how much should we deepen. And it's not a rocket science. But the misunderstanding is the more we deepen the lake, we will have more water, which is completely proven wrong now across the world. And the thing is, we are not only having not more water, but we are also having less life. Because if light is not going, fishes and plants are not growing, then birds are not coming, so everything gets disturbed. And the thing that the moment we are disturbing the benthic layer, which is because you bring your bulldozers and everything, and you are digging the lake, the benthic layer gets exposed, it gets disturbed. So the lake is unable to hold its water. So initially, before all this digging happened in all the lakes around the country, initially lakes, what we call it, water impounding capacity, that is the quantity. And then the water holding capacity is also same. But then how long will you hold? Initially, our water bodies had more capability to hold water for longer time. And then within the lake, also in different parts of the country, we had these percolation wells or vowlies, when in the extreme summer, when the water is not in the lake, you can go into the well and fetch your water. That was kind of a design. So even, which means the edge of the water body was gradually coming like this. So this whole bowl of water body, and the bowl which is holding is the benthic zone. Now, if you disturb the benthic zone, the water is not getting in, staying in the lake, and it is fast percolation. So there is a serious misunderstanding in it, because on one hand, people are suffering that there is not enough surface water. And mind you, we have turned our approach of irrigation and agriculture from surface water to groundwater in last 100 years. And the very reason being that we have access to groundwater because of the motors. Now, when it comes to the lake deepening, local authorities are using it as a modus operandi, that they are recharging the groundwater faster, because they disturb the benthic layer, the water is not holding in the lake. So they use the logic that they are recharging the groundwater faster, which is also not true. Because the more you tend to recharge groundwater faster, we have to know that we are multiplying many times of groundwater extraction. So the more water is going underneath through the lake, which is very slow speed, but the extraction of the lake through motor is very fast. So there is no match about it, and I think there is a serious mathematical error in this kind of understanding by local authorities. So during my PhD, I had this lot of debate with some local officials, that why dredging and why deepening of the lakes, and they will say that it is percolating fast. But then when you speak to farmers, when you speak to local people, you learn that the water was earlier used to live for 6 to 9 months, and it doesn't even live for 4 months now, because everything goes down. But then local authorities are using it is in their advantage, saying that lakes are meant to be groundwater recharging agents or bodies, and therefore it is fine to recharge groundwater as fast as possible. But the problem here is that we should try to use our surface water as much as possible and use less of our groundwater. In this kind of approach, we are in a way encouraging more use of groundwater as a tendency, as an attitude. And the fact that it percolates fast, it is also not purifying the water naturally. The slow percolation of the water body uh, into the groundwater means natural purification of the water through the layers of sediments. All these things get completely disturbed the moment we disturb the it's a natural plastic layer. Imagine that there is a natural plastic layer, which is the benthic zone. So we keep changing the depth of the water body, and we keep thinking why our water bodies are getting more dead kind of situations, and it is because the life is unable to thrive. And also the fact that, imagine a gradient like this and a gradient like this. So when you do manual deepening of the lake, you are losing the gradual gradation of the water body, and you are making it like a tank. you know so then where is the edge of the water body, which has which has shallow water system? So we are losing the shallow water system of the water body, which is the edge of the lake, which means we are losing the life in the lake. We have to learn that the life of the lake thrives on the edge of the lake. And imagine the edge of the lake now, where we see a straight cut and a concrete edge. Life, we killed the life, you know. So we have to really work towards keeping the edge of the lake. And that's the biggest misunderstanding. I think it is the most important thing to understand in lake, in any lake development and restoration. Just restore the edge, but we are developing the edge. And that, of course, that will be another discussion of restoration and development.
All right, that was very interesting to learn
Mm,
about. I did not know that people were actually deepening the lakes. I have not seen it. Perhaps that's lack on my experience.
yeah, I
But
mean,
certainly the way you
go ahead, go ahead.
so the way you certainly mentioned, the moment we have even the edges become deep, then the
Hmm.
life is gone. It becomes
No,
more like a tank, water tank.
absolutely, absolutely. So we have to work towards shallow water body, not towards deeper water body. And the thing is,
Right.
we are continuously deepening the water bodies,
Deepening
and
the
that's a
water.
problem.
Right.
So the
And
biggest
also the fact that
misunderstanding is this relationship of depth and life in the lake,
depth. Right.
which also means either we are pretending to not know, which and or it may be an arrogance to have water body only for human beings, and
Right.
not think about fishes and birds and
Right.
plants. So we are changing from pond, wetland, marshland to lake, and even we are changing the lake into a nature of tank.
Hmm. Right. And I remember visiting quite a few old systems where we had the monuments and the king had made
Hmm,
a sarovar near them.
hmm,
I
hmm,
think there was one in Ahmedabad,
hmm.
and there's one in Bhopal, the Jal Mahal besides that.
Yes.
So
In
what I
month
do,
in Jaipur also, no, Jal Mahal. Hmm.
right. So now I do not remember seeing a very deep dugout well or
Hmm.
dugout water body. It was very fairly, uh, shallow towards the edge, and maybe the middle portions were deep. I'm
Hmm.
talking when there was no water when we went in the uh, peak summer. The water
Hmm.
had evaporated, or
Hmm.
maybe something was
Percolated and
amiss,
evaporated both.
percolated, and it was not a very deep sort of a lake. It was a shallow lake towards the edge. Actually, I could see
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
bottom layers without the water.
Hmm.
And somewhere then I have a question that did our ancestors know this better than a lot of us know today?
100%. 100%, but we need to also understand that they were very clear between the wetland and tank. Because our ancestors also made these step wells and tanks and bowries and jhalaras, which was specifically meant for summer season.
Hmm.
And these humanly constructed structures were actually fed by the lakes, by the wetlands, which were natural shallow water bodies and which were used by animals and people for agriculture for most time of the year. And the constructed water structures were meant only for summer. There are many water bodies where you will find well inside the water body. There are many constructed wells and step wells which are just next to the lake. Because as I discussed earlier also during the percolation discussion just before this question, that the percolation is happening means the water is going into groundwater. If it is going to the ground or the aquifer, which means the well will have water. So there was this direct connection. Of course, the well will have water when lake also has water. But when lake has no water, well is there for water.
Right. Very
Well,
interesting
water in the
relationship
well will be
and
there all the year round. But
right.
because the communities had the wisdom to use more surface water when there is availability, and then use well, in other words, is an SOS. you know
Okay.
it's a emergency resource. But what has happened since, as I said, almost a century now, since we have motors, we have become less interested in the surface water. And India is one of the largest consumer of groundwater. But we'll talk about surface water, groundwater in another session. They have to go together. But the thing is, because we are less dependent on surface water, we have developed a modus operandi or a tendency to let water percolate as soon as possible into the ground, and which is wrong. We have to let the water percolate as slowly as possible. Remember, the role of the lake is not only to do rainwater harvesting and water percolation for groundwater, it is also the oxygen park or oxygen ground of the habitats. Water bodies produce more oxygen than trees. So if they are not on the ground, the water is not seen on the ground, which also means it is also not doing carbon sequestration, it is not also producing oxygen. All these things are getting affected.
Right.
So we are not realizing these kind of issues, because we are only interested in what we need. And now with the technology and all, we think that everything can be solved from groundwater. Groundwater itself is in problem at this moment in the country. It's depleting because our rate of percolation is way too slow or less as compared to a rate of taking it out. So imagine you are consuming, we are consuming, not you, we are consuming, let's say, 100 liters of water. We are producing at least 70 to 80 liters of wastewater, but we are only recharging 10 liters of water. So this is kind of a mismatch which we are right now facing. I'm just giving a broad number for people to understand in simple way. So this mismatch, it can never be really corrected if we continuously do this and not understand it. So we should not really actually aim for making people having access to too much of groundwater. So we have to control the groundwater,
Right.
which right now is not there. But then the thing is that deepening the lake has become kind of a trend in the country to understand that it will have more lake water in the lake. It is not having more water. And that's a misunderstanding, and that is continuously flawed.
Understood. All right. Coming to my next question,
Hmm.
what challenges come in the way of acknowledging lake depth?
I think it's not about acknowledging lake depth. I mean, people acknowledge the depth of the lake, but the acknowledgement is not that the depth of the lake decides the life of the lake. So people do have understanding that, and the understanding is that we need more deeper lakes. And my point is that we need shallow lakes. That's a very straightforward uh, difference. So depth of the lake is understood. Life of the lake is not understood. And it goes back to the very discussion when we keep talking about the birth of the lake, we keep talking about for who is this lake. If the lake is for us, then what people are doing at this moment, local authorities, consultants, architects, planners, they are just appropriating for us. But if we bring up the philosophical discussion, no, there are other beings who have right to the lakes, then there is a problem. I think that is not fitting into the depth of the lake. You know, we have to create shallow water bodies, and if it is a large water body, leave majority of that water body into shallowness and only have some portions, which is our ancestors did. So they had this kind of flat like thali like a water body, and then in few portions of that bed of the water body they will, so they were not disturbing the entire benthic zone, they were just percolating in few wells there. And it is still prevailing in many rural areas other than making large water bodies. The same formula was also applied by kingdoms when they made large water bodies. Sarkhej Rosa tank, for example, many Jhalaras, Bauris, and like Kankaria Lake, which is very popular in the country, but people don't know that Sarkhej and Kankaria, which are tanks, were served by large expanse of marshland or forest land, so that water can come from there. And then there was a dedicated constructed water tank which will keep the water for people to consume for drinking and agriculture. So the purpose was different, and it did not hamper the larger wetland. Now we take that small constructed water body as our model or sample, and we want to do this for all water bodies. That's wrong, no? So I think we have over understood depth for our for our utilization. So we are exploiting it, if I can put it that way.
Right. I think we really need education or somewhat a course around so that architects like me could understand the relationship between how a lake, you know, works and what's happening behind the scenes, which a
Hmm.
lot of us do not know. Having marshlands or forest serve the tank will make the tank full, but if we
Hmm.
remove that marshland, if we remove that forest, the tank will be empty.
Hmm.
And the fact that water bodies or lakes produce more oxygen than trees is very striking to me. I think
Yes,
a
it
lot of
is.
problems can be solved if we look at water bodies from this perspective also.
Absolutely. Hmm.
All
See,
right.
I mean, we talk about it. Even Ramsar presented this detail in the last conversation. We talked about it, that how multiplier effect water bodies have on even pollution, producing oxygen, all kinds of things. So
Mm, right.
we are so much keen to do a lot of plantation. We will talk about it also, waterscape and landscape. Uh, and I'm not against plantation, but the thing is, plants also needs water, no? And they
Right.
need surface water. That's the thing. So anyway,
It makes me feel that I should do a thesis on this, and I don't
yes,
know who I do this thesis to. I've graduated long
please go
time.
ahead.
Anyway, all right. Coming to my last question:
Hmm.
how can we improve our understanding about the depth of lake, and what would be your solution to course correct?
I think at this moment, the way our national document on lakes defines the depth of the lake is kind of a blanket definition that first needs. So, at a policy level, we need to make that change, and also uh, make it very clear in that very definition of lake that it's not a uniform depth of the water body that we are talking about. There has to be a gradation of the benthic zone, or the bed of the water body is more important than the shape and the depth of the water body. How is the bed sitting is extremely important, because we can avoid all these technical words or scientific words as benthic zone, but of course we can talk in terms of size and shape and form. So form of the lake becomes extremely important. How it is. So whether you if you have a lake like this, or if you have a lake like this, and we have to work on really promoting shallow lakes. Many places where you may have also, I don't know, in your childhood whether you had a chance, but I had a chance to play in Maidan was a very important part of habitat in our old times, and Maidans were kind of shallow swampy lands. They would sit there for 1 or 2 months. So the water will be there, and it will be muddy, and it will go away, and then it's a land for us to play. We miss shallow water bodies in the city. So I think there's a strong link between public open spaces and water bodies. So at this moment, the national statistics tells me to have 8 square meter per person public open space. Ahmedabad has zero point 0.8 square meter per person. So I feel these shallow water bodies can compensate for our need for public open space. not only for water recharging and water systems, but also for oxygen, also for social space. So all these things are extremely important, and I think the depth of lake is too well understood, and now it's time that we empathize that understanding. We just need to bring empathy into it, that the depth of the lake is also making the lakes dead. The deeper the lake, we are dying the lakes. Whereas our understanding is that the shallower the lake, we get into a zone where it becomes dead, because a dead lake is a land born. But there is this scientific thing in between, enough deep, but not too much deep. And I think people who are engaging into it, they are aware of it. It is just that the empathy is missing from there. So we need to redefine that we should not have lake beyond certain depth. But again, it will depend on the geography of the lake, how deep is the life giving. So I think the definition has to bring life, light, life into the lake, and that lake is for everyone. We miss that because we are still thinking all the lakes are for us, and we can grow fish in a farm and bring it. I think we are too much now techno savvy, and we are not seeing lake as living beings. For lake to be living being, it has to be shallow water body. I mean, period. So,
All right. So I just have one question. You
hmm.
mentioned that 8 square meter open space is as per a is it as per a government definition?
UDPFI guidelines. Yes, it's an
So it's
urban
already
design
there then.
guideline. Yes,
So we need to have, it's a mandate that we need to have eight
every
square
city
meters of
should
open
have.
space
Hmm.
per person. Is it per person?
Hmm.
Oh, that's very interesting. Then
That is
aren't we?
requirement. That is requirement, a part of human development or the human well-being index.
So is something being done about this?
That we need to check. I checked for Ahmedabad for my thesis, that Ahmedabad does not have. See, that is where the open spaces, which are shallow water bodies, for some time
Mhm.
of the year, played huge role, but then we did not recognize them.
Right.
But water percentage of water body is different than public open space, because even in urban areas we are still not in a position to acknowledge peatland, marshland, swampland as water bodies. They are land,
Right.
and we keep losing them. We lost them actually. Ahmedabad, 630 lakes, 222 lakes, because we lost most of them. And I'm talking about in a span of 20 years or less than 20 years.
Mhm.
And it's part of designation. We will talk about it. And
Mhm.
who is a lake? How do we decide? And the depth becomes very critical in that discussion.
Right.
And the depth is taken from what is defined right now in the national document. So
Oh,
much of the lake delineation may, when we are doing who is a lake, first thing, but how much is the lake, the edge of the lake is completely taken away as land because it is shallow, because we don't understand that life is going to thrive there. Many amphibians are hiding their eggs into the shallow land and the edge, and everything is gone then.
right.
And that the if you have the benthic zone or the bowl of the lake like this, the cattle can walk into the water body, they can swim and come back. But now when you have water body like this, you don't have access for all the domestic animals or cattle
Mhm.
or the farming animals. Ducks can walk, hens can walk into the water body, goats can walk. All these things are not happening in lakes anymore. Of course, because in urban areas, we don't want them to be there. We want to eat chicken, we want to eat egg, we want to eat meat, but we don't want them to be seen. We want to drink milk, but we don't want them to have their regular life, because we want them to be factory produced. So
Right.
it's again the technological advancement which we have received, that we can do anything with everybody, and that is the
Mhm.
same applies, that we can do anything with the lakes.
Yeah.
So that is turning the lake ecosystem into a lake infrastructure, and
Mhm.
that's a shift, in last 100 years. And community is out of it because these are all governmental decisions, large
Mhm.
decisions. So that is another discussion we need to have. Where are people in the lake right now? And who are these people for whom lake is made? You know,
Sure.
I can go on and on about lake. Trust me. I mean, I can talk endlessly about lakes.
All right. Um, so, concluding this session for our viewers, in case there are questions or comments, we are happy to hear from you. You may find Grammar of a Lake session on our YouTube channel Before Water and on our website www.w4w.org, along with many conversations dedicated to water, since we believe water conversations are a way towards water conservation. Stay tuned. See you again on Saturday Sailing. Take care and thank you for listening. Dr. Mansee, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Akash. See you soon. Bye bye. Take care.